In ancient India, there was a prince named Siddhartha who was deeply troubled by the suffering he saw around him. He had everything one could possibly want: wealth, luxury, and power. But he was not content. He wanted to understand the nature of suffering and find a way to end it. One night, Siddhartha was lying in bed, unable to sleep. His mind was racing with thoughts and worries. He tossed and turned, trying to find a comfortable position, but nothing worked. He was exhausted and frustrated, but sleep remained elusive. As the night wore on, Siddhartha became more and more agitated. He felt trapped in his own mind, unable to escape the endless stream of thoughts that kept him awake. He knew that he needed to find a way to calm his mind and get some rest, but he didn't know how. Desperate for a solution, Siddhartha decided to seek out the Buddha, a wise and enlightened teacher who was renowned for his wisdom and compassion. He traveled for days to reach the Buddha's monastery, hoping that the teacher could offer him some guidance. When Siddhartha arrived at the monastery, he was greeted by the Buddha himself. The teacher welcomed him with a warm smile and invited him to sit down and share his troubles. Siddhartha explained his predicament to the Buddha, telling him about his struggles with sleep and the overwhelming thoughts that kept him awake. The Buddha listened patiently, nodding his head in understanding. Sleep is a crucial part of our lives, the Buddha said. It allows us to rest and recharge, and it helps us to stay healthy and happy. But many people find it difficult to sleep well, especially when their minds are troubled. The Buddha then told Siddhartha a story about a man who was also struggling with sleep. The man was a farmer who worked hard all day in the fields, but when he went to bed at night, he found himself tossing and turning, unable to get comfortable. He tried everything he could think of to fall asleep, counting sheep, drinking warm milk, even taking sleeping pills, but nothing worked. One day, the farmer decided to seek out the advice of a wise old monk who lived in a nearby monastery. He traveled to the monastery and asked the monk for help. The monk listened to the farmer's troubles and then gave him a small bag of beans. "Take these beans home with you," he said. "Every time you find yourself struggling to sleep, take one of these beans out of the bag and hold it in your hand. Focus all of your attention on the bean and let everything else fade away. In this way, you will calm your mind and drift off to sleep." The farmer was skeptical, but he decided to give it a try. That night, when he went to bed, he found himself tossing and turning once again. But then he remembered the bag of beans and took one out. He held the bean in his hand and focused all of his attention on it. Soon, his mind became calm and quiet, and he drifted off into a deep and peaceful sleep. The next morning, the farmer woke up feeling refreshed and energized. He couldn't believe how well he had slept, and he knew that the bag of beans had worked wonders. From that night on, he used the beans every time he had trouble sleeping, and they never failed him. When the Buddha finished his story, he turned to Siddhartha and said, "Just like the farmer with his bag of beans, you too can find a way to calm your mind and get some rest. There are many techniques and practices that can help you sleep well and sleep deep. Meditation, breathing exercises, and relaxation techniques are just a few examples. Experiment with different." The next morning, the merchant woke up feeling refreshed and energized. He had never experienced such a deep and restful sleep before. He got up and thanked the Buddha for his teachings on how to sleep well and sleep deep. From that day onwards, the merchant followed the Buddha's advice on sleeping and maintained a regular sleep schedule. He also made sure that he did not eat heavy meals before bedtime and avoided alcohol and caffeine in the evenings. As a result, the merchant's health improved, and he became more productive in his work. He was able to focus better and make better decisions, and his business prospered. He was so grateful to the Buddha for showing him the path to a restful sleep that he decided to visit the Buddha again and thank him personally. When he reached the Buddha's monastery, he saw that many other people had gathered around the Buddha, seeking his guidance on various matters. The merchant patiently waited for his turn, and when it finally came, he bowed down to the Buddha and said, "O great Buddha, I came here to thank you for your teachings on how to sleep well and sleep deep. Your wisdom has transformed my life, and I am forever grateful to you." The Buddha smiled and said, "I am happy to hear that my teachings have helped you, my dear friend. But remember that sleep is only one aspect of a healthy and balanced life. To achieve true happiness, you must cultivate a balance in all aspects of your life, including work, relationships, and spirituality." The merchant listened carefully to the Buddha's words and realized that he had been too focused on his work and had neglected other areas of his life. He decided to take the Buddha's advice and work on achieving a balance in his life. Over time, the merchant made changes in his life. He spent more time with his family and friends, pursued his hobbies, and also started practicing meditation. He found that he was happier and more content than he had ever been before. Years went by, and the merchant grew old. One day, when he knew that his time on earth was coming to an end, he asked to be taken to the Buddha's monastery. When he met the Buddha, he said, "O great Buddha, I am about to leave this world. But before I go, I wanted to thank you once again for showing me the path to a restful sleep and a balanced life. Your wisdom has been my guiding light all these years." The Buddha smiled and said, "You have been a good student, my dear friend. But remember that I am just a guide. It is your own efforts and actions that have brought you this far. Now, go in peace, and may you find eternal rest." With these words, the merchant closed his eyes and took his last breath. The Buddha and his followers watched as the merchant's soul left his body and ascended towards the heavens. The story of the merchant and the Buddha's teachings on how to sleep well and sleep deep spread far and wide, and many people started following the Buddha's advice on sleep. They too experienced the benefits of a restful sleep and a balanced life, just like the merchant had. And so, the legend of the Buddha's teachings on sleep lived on, inspiring generations of people to seek the path to a healthy and happy life.